should I be afraid, right? We know God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And unless you're hidden in Christ in these last days, you will not know this. You will not be able to walk in this truth. So it is my prayer, and all of us here at Open Your Eyes people, that for those of you who are tuning in that don't know the Lord Jesus Christ as Savior, as Comforter, and if your name's not written in the Lamb's Book of Life, that it will be immediately in Jesus' mighty name. If you're just tuning in for the first time tonight, or maybe a returning viewer, because we were just live about an hour ago. I said it was going to take about 20 minutes, but it took us about an hour for the second segment. Well, welcome. And I bless each and every one of you in the name of the Lord. We got a lot to cover today concerning headlines. It's not just wars and rumors of wars, folks. We're talking about a distress of nations with perplexity, according to the words of Jesus in the Gospel of Luke chapter 21, verse 25. Now, we had an issue in our last segment that we just ran live about an hour ago, where YouTube had our words all scribbled and scrabbled. You had more consistency with scrambled eggs in the way they did our last live broadcast. My mouth was moving, but different words were coming out. It was crazy. So we know that there's a lot of nonsense taking place right now with YouTube and Google advertisers, and trying to shut down what they dub fake news, and just trying to silence the voices that are in the land one last time. But, you know, God rules and he reigns. So, all right. And Father, we give you praise for today's unexpected, unscheduled, but very needed live broadcast. Now, I want to share with you all the latest. In our last segment about an hour ago, we talked about the threat coming in from North Korea. North Korea and the Trump administration. If you missed that, please be sure to catch up on it. It's archived. It's available now. However, what we're going to be talking about right now is the Iran and U.S. conflict now. You can see on the screen, hopefully it's big enough for you, the nation of Iran has issued an official threat over the U.S. airstrikes in Syria. I want us to check this out. So let's go here to the link. It says here, according to Fox News, Iran issues threat over U.S. strikes in Syria. This just came out today, and it looks like there is a soundbite. Let's see what it says.
A Fox News alert. Welcome to Fox and Friends. That's President Trump announcing U.S. missile strikes in Syria in response to a chemical attack. And those visuals you're seeing right there were taken last night from the USS Ross and USS Porter, two warships, destroyers off the eastern Mediterranean, firing on a facility that we believe, we know, is where the chemical attacks originated.
That's right. So those are the missiles being launched off of our carriers or off of our destroyers, and then it hit the Surat Air Base. We have new video coming in right there. This is the first video released this morning of those Tomahawk missiles actually hitting the air base, hitting the runway in the middle of the night.
Meanwhile, live from Syrian television, this is also new video. I shouldn't have said live. It is on tape, and it shows you the bomb damage. And you can see in the background, looks like some of those hangars are scorched. We understand that portions of the runway were taken out. Keep in mind, this is also apparently a chemical weapons depot.
Yeah,
and so this is where they kept the stuff that they dropped on the people 2 days ago. We know that through intel sources, where we saw the planes take off from this airfield, circle over the area, presumably drop the stuff according to eyewitnesses, and then land there. And that is why President Trump felt confident that that was the spot to make this targeted strike against the country of Syria.
And as you look at this footage, you know, some buildings are standing, some are not. Keep in mind, Tomahawk missiles are precision guided. They will land within 10 meters, if not less, of their intended target. So when you've got chemical weapons on the facility, you've got Russians on the base, and you want to be very intentional about what you're striking, they hit the targets they wanted to hit.
Did they? Okay, well that's interesting, because just as we reported, and let me get out of here before we get into this next goofy video. I don't want to get into any more videos right now, because I want us to really talk about Iran now putting a threat against the U.S. and Donald Trump. But I want us to touch on something very briefly, because they were so confident, right, that they struck the chemical facility. So confident that, that, according to eyewitnesses, right? This is what we were just told. However, we have an issue, and I need to hurry up. I need to get to the headline. This thing needs to hurry up here for me. Where are we at? Come on. The issue, my headline was just here. Where is it? Where is that? Give me 1 second, folks. The issue is that John Kerry, and I'm trying to find the article. Here it is right here. John Kerry declared back in 2014 that all of the chemical weapons were out of Syria. John Kerry declared all chemical weapons were removed from Syria. This is the actual headline, or one of the headlines here. But I will show you the actual official Twitter page of the State Department, where they tweeted on June 2014, and I believe that's big enough for you all to see, where they stated, today the last 8% of declared chemical weapons were removed from #Syria. Great work done by all involved. Go.usa.gov. Again, June 23rd, 2014, 10:32 p.m. local time. And that was from the State Department at John Kerry. And of course, all the public eyes saw that. So what weapons depot, what chemical weapons depot was really truly hit yesterday? Was it a phantom hit? Was there anything in there? How can we launch any airstrikes based on eyewitnesses? That is not solid facts. Not in the midst of the Syrian civil war that's been plaguing Syria for 6.5 to 7 years, where you have a mixture of Syrians, regular Syrian citizens, rebels, both what they dub a moderate and not so moderate, and ISIS, who are posing as moderates when it's convenient for them, as they hide in villages purposely where there is a population of predominant men, women, and children, elderly people, the families. I believe it was a mistake what took place yesterday. I know many people are saying that we needed to do something. Well, no, I hear you. We can't just jump the gun here. I believe that Donald J. Trump and whatever counsel he received, and we actually reported yesterday that Hillary Clinton at a conference called the Women of the World in New York stated just hours prior to Donald Trump's release or his attack against the Syrian airbase, called for airstrikes on Syrian's airbase. And, it could be just a coincidence, right? Or it could be that Donald Trump actually kept his word when he said in the first week in office that, after getting off the phone with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, that he was, he was looking forward to taking their advice while he was in the White House. He may have just done that. Or again, it just could be a coincidence. However, we are in over our heads, folks. The U.S. is not ready for a war, let alone World War III. We're just not. Our nuclear weapon capability is down. Our military arsenal is down. Our military, in and of itself, God bless the men and women, by the way, in uniform. But our military has so much damage control that needs to be done because of the years of indoctrination under the Obama administration of what's real and what's not, who's a terrorist and who's not, what's the target and what's not, and more. So we're not ready for a war. You're not ready because many of you are not even saved. Many of you are not even prepared with extra food and water. I know everybody is saying that this is good, and it's not. Now here is the latest threat that's coming out from Iran. Again, Iran issues threat over Syria strikes, Iran issues threat over U.S. strikes in Syria. And it says the following here. I want to get this video out. Javad Zarif, which is a foreign minister of Iran, tweeted the following. As the only recent victim of mass use of chemical weapons by Saddam in the 80s, Iran condemns use of all weapons of mass destruction by anyone against anyone. Aladin Borizerdi, head of the Parliamentary Committee on National Security and Foreign Policy, declared Russia and Iran won't be quiet against such acts without violent interest of the region, according to the report. Then you have Javad go ahead and he tweeted some more. U.S. aids Saddam's use of chemical weapons against Iran in the 80s, then resorts to military force over bogus chemical weapons allegations. First in 2003 and now in Syria. I think he may be onto something here. I know not many want to admit it, and I'm definitely, with all due respect to the Iranians, I'm not a supporter of the Iranian regime by any means. But again, we did a airstrike, or we did Tomahawk airstrikes, for crying out loud. In Syria, not against ISIS. We spent millions of dollars not to fight ISIS, but in all reality, to help them in a way, because this helped ISIS. If Assad, listen folks, please hear the evangelist. If the Trump administration does exactly what ISIS wants them to do, which is remove Assad, get Assad out, there will be a huge vacuum, a huge gaping hole where ISIS is going to come right on in and they will rule that country. This is the last thing that we want, that anyone wants in the Middle East, because then it will be a caliph of this ISIS regime and their nonsense ideology that's demonic. So if Trump is serious, because he's already started something here, he needs to take out ISIS first. He can't even touch Assad. You can't. It's not, Assad is the lesser of two evils here. It's just, you can't. You're going to be giving over innocent blood to bloodshed murderers. Now, I know many people believe that Assad, the president of Syria, who has been accused of launching these chemical attacks, is the criminal. He's a terrorist. He's the one who's bombed his own people. But again, there is no solid proof of this. And we should have never bombed or sent over any airstrikes to Syria until we knew cold hard facts. For the sake of preventing not only a major conflict in the Middle East, but a World War III. Anyway, it says here, Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif took to Twitter on Friday to denounce the strike, saying not even 2 decades after 9/11, U.S. military fighting on the same side as Al-Qaeda. What an accusation, folks. And then he goes on to say, and ISIS. In Yemen and Syria, time to stop the hype and cover-ups. Zarif also called the allegation that the Syrian military used chemical weapons as bogus. U.S. aids Saddam use of chemical weapons against Iran in the 80s, then resorts to military force over bogus chemical weapons allegations. First in 2003 and now in Syria, Zarif tweeted. The U.S. strike came in fiery retaliation for this week's gruesome chemical weapons attack against civilians. About 60. Just yesterday we reported at 45. 60 now. U.S. Tomahawk missiles hit the Sharit Air Base southeast of Homs, a small installation with 2 runways where aircraft often take off to bomb targets in northern and central Syria. The U.S. missiles hit at 3:45 a.m. Friday morning and targeted the base's airstrips, hangars, control tower, and ammunition areas. I'm telling you, folks, I don't think they destroyed any chemical weapons in this particular facility. I think it was a phantom hit. Now, whether they knew it or not, I don't know. They should have, because that's what intelligence is for. But I think someone really dropped the ball here. And Trump received horrific counsel on launching these strikes. Iran Foreign Ministry spokesman Bahram Ghassemi said Friday the U.S. missile strike was dangerous, destructive, and violates the principles of international law. The semi-official ISNA news agency reported. We are now being accused. Listen, the Trump administration is now being accused in strengthening the terrorists. This is not what Trump wants in his first, not even full year of being in office. It's not even been a full 6 months. Now, I want to read to you something from the economiccollapseblog.com. that caught my attention, and it is titled, "The U.S. Entered World War I on April 6, 1917. Did Trump just start World War III on April 6, 2017? Folks, that's eerie. That's eerie. It's too much of coincidence. You know, people will call it coincidence, but you know what it is? It's prophetic. We're looking at Bible prophecy, folks. The day of the Lord truly is at hand. Here's the actual, an image of the U.S. naval destroyer launching these airstrikes over to the airbase in Syria. I want to read some of this article from Michael Schneider. Did World War III begin on April 6, 2017? After Donald Trump fired 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles into Syria on Thursday night, millions of Americans were cheering. But the cheering isn't going to last for long if a new world war erupts. What is amazing to me is that this happened on the 100th anniversary of the United States entry into World War I. The U.S. officially entered that war on April 6, 1917, and now 100 years later to the day, Donald Trump has essentially declared war on Syria. I want to read some more here, so let me click in here. Make sure you all can see it as best as possible. It goes on to say, if you think using the term World War III is alarmist, you might want to tell that to the vast numbers of people that are buzzing about a new world war all over social media. If you don't yet understand why a strike on Syria could be so dangerous, go back and read my article from yesterday. And we'll see. If we continue striking Syria, we could very easily find ourselves in a direct military conflict with Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah. Hopefully last night will be the full extent of U.S. military action if Donald Trump and his national security advisors pat themselves on the back for looking tough and decide that was enough. We probably won't see a major regional war breakout. But if the U.S. decides that the regime change is necessary and continues to conduct more strikes, and please, before I go any further, folks, Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State under the Trump administration, made it clear that a regional change is necessary, that they're working with other nations to help oust Assad. Right here. You got a few of them here, folks. This is Rex Tillerson right here, a very important fellow in the Trump administration. Rex Tillerson, U.S. organizing coalition to remove Assad, bad idea. These guys are serious in the Trump administration. They believe this is the way to go. It's not. This is Obama. This is Hillary Clinton. What are they doing? Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says there's been no change in U.S. policy towards Assad. Tillerson says steps are underway to remove Assad. And it's true. Again, they are organizing with other nations in ways and plans to oust Assad. Russia will not allow it. That will be a World War III. Now, many say, why is Russia backing a horrific dictator such as President Bashar al-Assad of Syria? Maybe because President Bashar al-Assad of Syria is not the big bad wolf that mainstream media has made him out to be. Now, I'm not saying he's a cupcake either, okay? But I am saying that he has been the only leader in the Middle East outside of the nation of Israel who's been willing to protect Christians in Syria. Remember the Coptic Christians in Egypt? Remember the Syrian Christians that were murdered and slaughtered by ISIS all throughout Syrian villages? You think it was the U.S. who went in and helped the Christians over in Syria? You think it was, Iraq or Iran or Turkey? No. It was President Bashar al-Assad who did what he could to keep the villages as protected as possible after ISIS went in and slaughtered them, and even before then. But because of the great shakeup and the so-called Arab Spring that broke out all across the Middle East, Syria being a huge target after Libya and Yemen and Egypt and the Ivory Coast and other nations were hacked off under the Obama administration under the so-called democracy that was going to uprise in the Arab Spring, Syria, by God's grace, did not go under. We all know what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. We all know what happened to all these other leaders and how Muslim Brotherhood came in. A lot of the Muslim Brotherhood has been chopped off, so that's a good thing. But still, the target is on Syria. We know Syria is in Bible prophecy. Syria is a key player in biblical prophecy. The Bible says in Isaiah chapter 17, verse 1, that Damascus, which is a main city in Syria, biblical city, by the way, that's still standing over 2,000 years later, Damascus will cease from being a city. Damascus will become a ruinous heap. Who's going to make it a ruinous heap? I believe the nation of Israel is. Because if you go down in verse 3, it actually states, I believe it's verse 3 or verse 4, that it will be to the glory of Israel. Why? Why would Damascus be a ruinous heap? Well, because a lot of stuff is coming out of there to help terrorists. ISIS has a lot of strongholds throughout Syria. And Assad is a block to ISIS and other Al-Qaeda organizations and these terrorist organizations of making the entire nation of Syria a stronghold. Because if they get Syria, they get a huge part of the Middle East, folks. And that's what they want to establish, a caliphate. We're not just talking about flesh and blood. This is spiritual as well. A lot of spiritual components when we're talking about this last days, prophetic events, literally matching these headline news. Anyway, let's go back here to the article from Brother Michael Schneider. It says here, if the U.S. decides that regime change is necessary, and I just showed you, Rex Tillerson, that's the Trump administration, they are saying it is necessary, and they continue to conduct more strikes, we will have war. We will have war. Now, I find this stunning because, again, I just showed you Rex Tillerson was very troubling. It's just a few short days ago. Donald Trump said that Assad was no longer on the U.S.'s top concern list. That, whatever's happening in Syria will stay in Syria. They're not going to, get involved. Was Donald Trump duped into a false flag attack? No, Barack Obama is no longer in office, but the so-called powers that be are still running some things. These puppets that are running other puppets are still trying to establish a global order that will bring forth a beast system. Listen, folks, this is real stuff that's happening in real time. Let's continue. It goes on to say, and unfortunately, there are already signs that this may happen. We just shared that with you. On Friday, today, U.S. Ambassador, now I got to double check if that's today. It could be last Friday or it could be today. But it says here on Friday, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, stated that the Trump administration is prepared to do more. She is quoted as stating the following. The United States took a very measured step last night, Haley said. But we are prepared to do more. But we hope that will not be necessary. It is time for all civilized nations to stop the horrors that are taking place in Syria and demand a political solution. All right. So this is apparently a new statement coming in from Nikki Haley. Again, a lot of heartstrings are being pulled in the horrific attacks that took place in the chemical attack that took place in Syria. But folks, how do I say this without making it sound like I'm being insensitive? This is propaganda. I'm not saying it wasn't real what happened. I'm not telling you folks that. There was a chemical attack that took place in Syria. Make no mistake about it. Deaths happened. People suffered. People died. However, it's a setup to oust Assad. And there's no way. We cannot. Come on, Trump. There's no way, Trump, that you're going to look like that you're helping ISIS. Somebody's giving you some real bad advice and you're listening to it. But we're praying for you that God's wisdom overtake you. Anyway, let's continue. It says here, I don't understand why so many Americans seem to have a thirst for war. I've been studying war virtually all my life. When I was just a small boy, I would check huge volumes on World War I, World War II, and the Korean War out of the library and read them cover to cover. And let me tell you, war is hell. Nobody should actually want to see war, and now we are closer to the next world war than we have been in decades. Needless to say, the Russians are extremely angry about what Trump has done. Russian President Vladimir Putin has denounced it is an illegal act of aggression, quote. And Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev says that the U.S. came within an inch, check this out, that they came within an inch of a direct conflict with Russian forces. Here's a headline. Independent. .com states the following. Russia says U.S. airstrikes in Syria came within an inch of military. All right, I'll respect you. I'll respect you. Let me do this real quick, folks. I gotta respect what we're doing here. It says here, Russia says U.S. airstrikes in Syria came within an inch of military clash with their forces. Satellite imagery suggests the base that was struck is home to Russian special forces and military helicopters. They didn't tell us that in MSM, mainstream media. I don't like it. Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev has said the U.S. airstrike on a Syrian airbase came within an inch of military clashing with their forces. He said that the action taken by the Americans was in breach of international law in their own internal procedures and accused Washington of barely avoiding combat clashes with Russia. Now, I don't want all these ads, but, you know, we're going to just do our best here. In a post on Facebook, Mr. Medvedev said the airstrike had completely ruined relations between the two superpowers. In other words, Barack Obama didn't even do this bad, and we were not Barack Obama fans, okay? This is pretty serious when Russia basically says any tiny possibility that we had Trump and this new administration is fini, out the window. However, the U.S. says it warned Russia 1 hour before it fired 50, or it says 59, we know it's been 60, Tomahawk cruise missiles at the Syria Air Base. Satellite imagery suggests that the base that was struck is home to Russian special forces and military helicopters. Part of the Kremlin's effort to help the Syrian government fight ISIS and other militant groups. Now, no Russian personnel were caught up in the strike as of yet. Syria state media has claimed that a U.S. missile attack on a government air base has killed 7 people, including 4 children. All right. What else we got? So what in the world is Trump thinking? What in the world is Trump thinking? What in the world are you thinking if you think this is okay? The Russians very much wanted Trump to win the election because they felt that there was a very high probability of war between our two nations if Hillary Clinton would have won. And the Russians were quite right to think that. So the Russian people rejoiced greatly when Trump won because they thought that it would be a new day for relations between our two great countries. Again, I repeat this, folks. What was done yesterday is exactly what Hillary Rodham Clinton would have done if she was running the White House. It's exactly what Barack Obama threatened to do. He never got to do it for whatever reason. And now here we are. Now check this out. Let's continue. After last night, that hope is dead. In fact, historians will probably mark April 6, 2017 as a day when the relationship between the United States and Russia officially died. And it didn't take long for the Russians to start to respond. The following comes from the Business Insider. The Russian Foreign Ministry announced that it suspended an agreement to avoid clash between Russian and U.S.-led coalition jets over Syrian airspace. Listen, here's the headline. Here's the headline. This is straight from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation themselves. As of April 7, 2017, they state the following Foreign Ministry statement on U.S. military action in Syria on April 7, 2017. And I'll read a little bit of this. We got to, it's part of what we're talking about. The United States conducted strikes against Syrian government troops in the early hours of April 7th, using chemical weapons attack in Idlib province as a pretext. The U.S. opted for a show of force for military action against a country fighting international terrorism without taking the trouble to get the facts straight. It is not the first time that the U.S. chooses an irresponsible approach that aggravates problems the world is facing and threatens international security. The very presence of military personnel from the U.S. and other countries in Syria without consent from the Syrian government or a United Nations Security Council mandate is an egregious and obvious violation of international law that cannot be justified. While previous initiatives of this kind were presented as efforts to combat terrorism, now they are clearly an act of aggression against a sovereign Syria. Actions undertaken by the U.S. today inflict further damage to the Russia-U.S. relations. And there is a ton more to read here, and you can probably read it on your own time. But the point is that we have the Russian Foreign Ministry They announced it just today that again it has suspended an agreement to avoid clashes between Russia and U.S.-led coalition jets over Syrian airspace. While Reuters reporter Idris Ali reports that Russia withdrew from a deconfliction channel, which the U.S. used Thursday night to warn Russian forces of the incoming cruise missile strikes, which took place Friday morning local time. In addition, this is a lot, folks. Are you saved? Is your name written in the Lamb's Book of Life? Things are getting so escalated. We just wrapped up about an hour and a half ago a live broadcast on North Korea. North Korea is ready to pounce. They're ready to strike. They're all like on edge right now because of all that's taking place. Kim Jong-un saying, "Wait a minute, Trump's been threatening to take me out." The Trump administration's already making plans with other governments in South Korea and Japan to try to have me assassinated. I see Trump struck, so this man's serious. And he's trigger happy. He's ready to fire something before he goes down. It's crazy. And then we just talked about Iran, and now this. It says here, in addition, it has been announced that Russia will be significantly bolstering air defenses in Syria. And according to Fox News, a Russian warship has been dispatched to confront the 2 U.S. naval vessels that fired the cruise missile at Syria. Here's a report. Let's check out the report from Fox News right there. Russian warship steams toward U.S. destroyers that launched the Syrian strikes. I believe I got a report here, an actual video.
And as John was speaking, we just got some word of military response from the Russians. Fox News has learned that a Russian warship, the Admiral Grigorovich, has entered the eastern Mediterranean. It cruised through the Straits of Bosphorus a few hours ago. It is now heading toward the 2 U.S. Navy destroyers that launched the airstrikes last night. Now, this is far from saying that there is a military confrontation ahead. Maybe it's just an information gathering mission.
Right.
But for whatever reason, the Soviets have decided to send a frigate into the eastern Mediterranean in the same area where the 2 American destroyers are that launched those cruise missile strikes last night on Syria. We will keep our eyes on this Russian ship as best we can, let you know more about what's happening there.
Oh, wait. So, that's, this is in addition to all that's going on, Well, yeah, because we just reported that, we apparently were an inch away from hitting Russia in this particular airbase that we struck over 60 times with Tomahawk missiles. So we got that information. Here in the United States, we need to start making our voices heard very loudly. That President Trump will understand that most Americans do not want to go to war in Syria. And of course, the same thing can be said about a potential war with North Korea. Hear this, please, folks. After last night's cruise missile display, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is now warning that his nation is on the brink of war with the United States. Can we get a link for this? No, this could be kind of tricky. They got a lot of junk on this site, but we'll see what we can do without looking at all that junk. Here it is. World War III fears. Kim Jong-un declares he's on the brink of a war with U.S. as Donald Trump is urged to assassinate North Korean dispo. North Korea warned it is ready to deliver the most ruthless blow as a major U.S. naval exercise ramps up tensions in the region. Yesterday, Trump pledged to ramp up defense against his Pyongyang, which is the capital of North Korea, as he met China's President Xi Jinping for crunch talks in Florida. That just happened within the past 24 hours. By the way, those talks resulted in nothing. Here is, Kim Jong-un, waving. And here is a president. Here's the president of the United States with his wife, and then the president of China with his wife just yesterday. It's President Donald Trump. And here, let me play the soundbite.
Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump, 2 leaders from 2 polar opposite nations. But when it comes to diplomacy, neither man plays by the usual conventions. This was President Trump on the North Korea problem last month.
Opinions of North Korea is acting very, very badly. I will tell you, he's acting very badly. Thank you.
Within hours, a statement from Pyongyang vowed to reduce the US to ashes. And here's what sparked the latest escalation of aggression. United Nations sanctions against North Korea have failed to halt its nuclear program, not something previous US administrations have troubled themselves with. But Kim Jong-un is making progress, and the threat to South Korea, Japan, and ultimately the US is growing. Now President Trump has used an interview with the Financial Times to make his toughest threat yet. China has great influence over North Korea, he said, and China will either decide to help us with North Korea or they won't. If China is not going to solve North Korea, we will. That is all I'm telling you. The timing here is crucial. Chinese President Xi Jinping is scheduled to fly to the US this week. It's the first time he'll meet Mr. Trump, who is not afraid to make his views on China clear.
The field has not been a level field. Jobs have been leaving our country, going to China and Mexico and lots of other places.
The latest comments on North Korea will put the issue at the top of the agenda. They also put President Trump in a position that no other US leader has been in since the rise of the threat from this rogue nation. Joe Tidy, Sky News.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But let's continue. One of the angles that is not getting a lot of discussion in the mainstream media, however, are the events of last night were viewed by the Chinese. So, please remember, the president of China was in the U.S. being wined and dined by Donald Trump and seeking to try to, establish a solution, not just with North Korea, but what's happening over in the East China Sea, because China's been trying to lay claim to some, man-made islands that they made in the middle of the ocean, and where they're building an actual military airstrip and airspace, or not airspace, but an actual military strip, and these islands are being disputed. And so, what was China's take on it? Well, let's continue to read what Brother Schneider says here. Donald Trump grew up in New York City at a time when the mafia still had a dominant presence, and to put a hit on another rival across town when you were sitting down for a meeting with a top boss from another family sends a very, very powerful message. The fact that Trump ordered those 59 cruise missiles to rain down on Syria at the exact moment when he was having dinner with the president of China is going to be remembered by the Chinese for a very, very long time. In Asian cultures, respect is a very big thing, and the Chinese had to be deeply embarrassed by what just happened last night. On top of everything else, the truth is that Donald Trump blatantly violated the U.S. Constitution by conducting a military strike against Syria without the approval of Congress. Now, there are many who are disputing this. They are saying, well, he didn't need to go to Congress. This was not a declaration of war. This was just an airstrike. This is something that President Barack Obama did. He conducted approximately, I believe, well over 3,000 airstrikes against Iraq and Syria during his administration, all in an attempt to attack ISIS. And so what was the big deal with what, Donald Trump did? Others are very angry. They're accusing him of breaking not only U.S. constitutional law, but also international law. But let's see what else is said here. It says here, this is something that U.S. Senator Rand Paul pointed out very clearly in an editorial that was released on Friday. Let's check it out. Senator Rand Paul, Syria, Trump, and another unconstitutional rush to war. Now let's hear what Senator Rand Paul has to say.
Senator John McCain is one of the most influential voices on military affairs, and he is applauding President Trump's call for the Syrian airstrike.
Of course John McCain would. But I don't know if we're going to be talking about, is this John McCain or Rand Paul? We'll find out.
This president reacted to events which were so horrific that it required American reaction, and I believe that not only was the act itself important, but the signal that it sent to the world from President Trump was as important.
Now he's a fan. See, John McCain, I don't know about him. At first I was like, oh, he's a rhino, a Republican in name only. But he was, there was some pictures of him having photo ops with, at the time it was called Syrian moderate rebels in Syria, as he was, visiting Syria to speak with the Syrian moderate rebels and trying to get some military equipment over to them from the U.S. And it turns out that some of these guys he took the photo op with are actual ISIS members, that they went to become ISIS members. And that was not even a year after, I believe, after the photo op. So it's kind of, you know, a lot of people have accused John McCain of trying to help ISIS. What's really going on, folks? Some people call it fake news. Some people call it true news. We just know that you got to have the good news, which is Jesus, because in these last days, if you don't know the truth, which is Jesus, you're going to be all over the place. We know that we're living in a time of deception, which is a sign of the times that Jesus says in Matthew chapter 24, Mark chapter 13, and in Luke chapter 21. Truly, the day of the Lord is at hand. Let's continue, though, with the soundbite. See what else is said.
Joining me now is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. He is a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Do you agree with what Senator McCain said?
Well, I think when you look at whether we go to war or not, it's one of the most important questions that any legislator will ever address. But I think it's ironic that this week we confirmed Neil Gorsuch, an originalist who believes in the original interpretation of the Constitution. But our founders in the original days believed that war should be declared by Congress. So I think before you even get into the debate of whether we should or shouldn't, we should start out with the law. And the law says that the president does not have the power to declare war, does not have the power to take us to war. And so I think that's the real problem with this issue. We didn't have the debate. We just simply went to war.
The argument on the other side of that would be that we are not at war, that he took an action in order to stop the killing that was going on. Now it is his responsibility to come to you and to agree together on the next step.
I guess the point is that we never know whether that initial salvo was the beginning of a war that will unleash thousands of bombs and involve hundreds of thousands of soldiers, or whether that was just sort of a warning shot and that's all it'll be. So I don't think anybody knows that in the beginning, but I think those who try to argue that war is not war, that bombs are not killing, that death is not really death, and that kinetic action is not war, I think that's difficult. I think most regular Americans sitting at home watching the TV would understand dropping bombs on another nation to be war. Now, I'm not saying that, what Syria did wasn't atrocious, and that we aren't aghast at, the pictures of the babies and children suffering from nerve gas. But we also have to understand that we'll be sending our young men, we have some of our young men and women over there already, that they are there in the middle of this, and really don't they deserve that we obey the Constitution and only take them into war according to our oath of office?
Well, all right. So that was Rand Paul. So, I'd love to hear your comments. We have some chat going on YouTube and on live stream, but that was, several things that Senator Rand Paul pointed out very clearly, just as you heard. I'm not going to go ahead and repeat them. Conservatives always protested whenever Barack Obama violated the U.S. Constitution in this manner. And so they should protest when Donald Trump acts in the same fashion. A lot of people will read this article and they aren't going to grasp the importance of what is going on because they do not understand where all of this is ultimately heading. But there are some of you that have major alarm bells going off in your head because you have been listening to the warnings and you know what comes next. We have entered a season of time that myself and other watchmen have been warning for many years. I just can't believe that it is starting to happen so quickly. Many had been hoping for a time of peace and prosperity during a time of reprieve, quote, under Donald Trump. But you can forget that now. The events of April 6, 2017 have changed everything. And most Americans are completely unprepared for what will soon follow. Wow, what an article. My friends, we are seeing unprecedented events, events that we haven't seen, I should say. I won't say unprecedented, but we'll definitely say, events we have not seen and did not expect to see under the Trump administration anytime soon. Our prayer here at Open Your Eyes People is that you take all that's, happening, very seriously. In the midst of so much, heated friction between the nations, the distress and the perplexity that's taking place, it is our prayer that you prepare your hearts, prepare your minds, and prepare your house by the Spirit of the Lord. Now, I know we have people that are tuning in and you don't believe in God. Now's not the time to continue in a foolish way. The day of the Lord is at hand, and Jesus Christ is Lord. And if you call on the name of the Lord, you will be saved. It's as simple as that. He will forgive you of your sins. He will cleanse you from all unrighteousness, but you must fully surrender your life to him by calling on his name and realizing that you can't save yourself. Only Jesus can save you. My friends, I look forward to coming to you again. I'm going to try to see if we could do another broadcast in about 30 minutes live with any additional updates concerning the conflict over in Syria, the airstrikes that was launched from the Trump administration over to Syria, and more. So be sure to tune in approximately 30 minutes or so. And I look forward to that broadcast. In the meantime, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Log on to our Facebook and like it, follow us on Facebook. And, visit us on our website, www.openyoureyespeople.com, www.openyoureyespeople.com. While you're there, why don't you help support the work, help support the channel, help support the ministry, help support what we do. It is alternative media. It is the work that the Lord has allowed us to bring to you that helps us walk narrowly, circumspectly in these last days, the way that we've been called to by him. You can log on again to our website and donate, www.openyoureyespeople.com. Our mailing address is P.O. Box 9570, Rancho Cucamonga, California, 91701. We have since relocated to Texas. Very happy to be here. And once we get a Texas P.O. Box established, we will be sure to make that public. Until then, our current, the address I just currently gave you is still suffice. And we look forward to coming back to you again in about 30 minutes. Thank you much. Thank you much.